This morning's story time is about things that your friends get you into. One of my oldest friends, Eric, you'll hear more stories about Eric, but we have been friends since 5th grade. Eric's one of those friends that we just click together. We got along great, and we always have. And even if we go, as we've gotten older, 6 months to a year can go by without speaking or hearing from or anything. One of us can call the other one and we pick right up where we left off. And it's like you never missed a day. Okay. So several years back, Eric calls me up randomly. Says, "Hey man, you still got your CDL?" I'm like, "Yeah, I still got my CDL. I can still drive truck." He goes, "Well, I may have bought something on eBay that was a lot bigger than I thought it was." I was like, "Okay, cool. What'd you buy?" He says, "I bought a snowplow." Okay. Eric was a contractor, and when it was bad weather, plowed snow. Made sense. So I was like, how big a truck did you buy? He said, "Well, in the pictures on eBay, it looked smaller." He said, "But they sent me more pictures, and now it looks a lot bigger." I'm like, "Okay, cool. Where's the truck at?" He goes, "Cleveland. It's in Cleveland, Ohio." I'm like, "Ooh, that's like 6 hours away." He's like, "Yeah, you want to go on Saturday and drive that thing home for me?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm in. Sounds like a good time." So on Saturday, me, my wife, Eric, and his wife all hop in the car and drive to Cleveland. Like I said, 6 hour drive. We get there roughly around noon. And we get there, and sure enough, this plow truck is absolutely huge. It was made for Cleveland snows. When they have lake effect snow that just absolutely dumps feet of snow on the roads in like hours, and you've got to have something come by and clean it up. That's what they made this truck for. Well, when they were done with it, they put it up on eBay to sell it. Like I said, Eric bought it. It had a plow that went on the front, like most snow plows, but it was big enough that it had a plow on the belly of the truck. There was a plow also under the truck. For those of you that have actually plowed snow, you'll understand this, and for those that haven't, I'll try to explain it. When the plow is on the front, you only have the weight of the plow itself to push the snow. If the snow's hard packed, ice, whatever, the plow is going to skip across the top. It's going to try to grade it flat the best it can, but it's going to just go right across the top if it's really hard packed. So the designer of this plow truck, his concept was if he puts a plow under the truck, it has the weight of the truck to hold the plow down. Pretty good concept. So the guys show up, give us the keys to the truck. We decide we're going to start heading home. And now, mind you, it wasn't a diesel truck. It was a gas engine. And I believe it was a 472 cubic inch Ford motor. I'm going off memory. I think that's what it was. But, so needless to say, pushing a truck that big, I'll insert a picture. I'm sure I got a picture of the truck somewhere. It's going to go through some gas. So the first dead giveaway on that should have been the 100-gallon fuel cell behind the cab. In between, it had a salt spreader box on the back. Spread salt for that lake effect snow. But it had a 100-gallon fuel cell on the back. That should have been our first indication. We pull up to a gas station, go in, start standing there filling it up. We had to go in twice because the pump's cut off at a certain dollar value. We had to go back in twice to fill the tank up. So we start our adventure home. And the truck does good. No, from sitting for a while, no major defects. The brakes worked. Truck was running good. Then we reach the mountains in West Virginia. And if you've ever went through I-64 in West Virginia, you go through Ohio up to Cleveland, there's not many mountains. We'll just call them rolling hills. Not really any mountains to speak of. You get to West Virginia, and there's up, back down, up, back down. West Virginia looks like you took a map of Texas, crumpled it all up, left that wadded piece of paper, and then that's now the mountains and valleys of West Virginia. That's what it is. So we get to West Virginia, truck starts heating up, going up hills, because it's having to push all the way to the plows, spreader box, everything. So needless to say, I'm going slower up the hills than everything else. Mind you, it's a gas truck, so you got to hit it wide open and then just let it wind back down. It's not like a diesel. You can't hit it with any torque. So we're on the West Virginia Turnpike, the ditch, and a Peterbilt decides to pass me. This truck was so big that he passes me, at about this fast. We're in the uphill drag race that everybody hates. I'm over here in this lane. The Peterbilt comes by me. And again, this truck was so big that I looked down at the Peterbilt as he went by. I was more than a foot taller than his passenger side window. I had to look down to see in the Peterbilt that was going by me to look at the driver when he went by. It was that point I realized how big the truck was. Before, I was like, okay, yeah, it's a big truck, whatever. Driven, yeah, okay. When the Peterbilt went by me and I saw the roof lights, on top when I was looking eye level with the roof lights, I knew I was pretty top heavy. So needless to say, we get to Sandstone Mountain. For any of you that went down Sandstone, for my first time driving this truck, it was a learning experience. I wasn't sure what gear I was supposed to be in. We pulled over at the top, the mandatory stop at the top of Sandstone Mountain like you're supposed to. Pulled over, checked the brakes. They were all still there, weren't on fire. So we decided to take off again. Well, getting the truck back up to speed, I went one gear too high. In my head, I was thinking diesel truck, I can turn on the jakes, just slow me down. No. In a gas engine, it just basically freewheels when it's under that much load. So we go down the hill, we get to the bottom, and I was seriously contemplating doing the runaway ramp. If the runaway ramp at the bottom hadn't been a sharp right-hand turn that I was sure was going to roll that top-heavy truck, we might have thought about it more. But I've seen that runaway ramp before, and I was like, sharp right-hand turn, top-heavy truck, ain't going to end good. So we rode it out. Basically, we passed cars, went way faster than we should have, but we made it, no one injured, you know. Miles later, we laughed about it. At that moment, we were sucking vinyl, you know, clenching real hard, hanging on. So needless to say, we make it home. Now, mind you, it took 6 hours to get to Cleveland. It took us 12 hours to get home. By the time you counted the speed of the truck, because it was geared pretty low, she was not going to run 80. Stopping for fuel, because I believe we went through 400 gallons of fuel to get that thing home. And, you know, just stopping because our wives were behind us, and I forget what they were in. They had a tiny little car, but we would stop and eat. You know, we stopped in Beckley. We stopped somewhere in Ohio to eat. You know, us stopping several times. It took 12 hours to come home. So this was an 18-hour adventure that we went through. We got the truck home. No tickets were given. You know, nobody was arrested. You know, and nobody was injured. We all had a good laugh about it. And it turns out the truck wasn't the weight class. It wasn't 25,999. If a truck is 26,000 gross or higher, you have to have a CDL to drive. Turns out the truck wasn't but like 24,000. Eric could have drove it anyway. But hey, it made for a great adventure. We had fun. So fast forward a couple years, and I decide that I'm going to buy something off Craigslist. I saw something on Craigslist that caught my eye. I was like, ooh, I need that for a project. I decided to buy a 1984 GeorgiaBoy motorhome that we were going to strip the motorhome off of and make a hot rod hauler. Just use the frame and chassis and put something else on it, strip the motorhome off. So I find one on Craigslist that, you know, it definitely needs work. The inside is definitely shot. So I call up Eric and I'm like, hey man, you want to go on an adventure with me? He's like, yeah, sure. You know, kind of like, hey, I want to repay the favor. I went with you. You want to go with me? He's like, yeah, man, we're all in. So we go about 45 minutes south of the North Carolina-Virginia line, almost into Winston-Salem, but not quite. We go all the way down there, go to this house that I found on Craigslist, show up, and sure enough, there is a 38-foot motorhome sitting outside this house. And I'm like, ooh, that's going to be mine. Joy. So we go inside, and it looked like carnies had lived in it for years. And yes, I spent one summer as a carny, so yes, I can dig on carnies and be okay. Spent one summer doing that. That was enough. But inside, trashed. So we decide we're going to do a will it start long before the will it start videos ever came out. We fire it up, had to air up 2 tires, and get it unstuck from the yard. It had been there long enough, it had sank into the dirt. Now this is a 3-axle motorhome. It's got the front axle, the drive axle, and then a helper axle behind the drive axle to hold the weight. So we get it out of the yard, and we start down the road, and half of everything electrical in the motorhome won't work. I don't know whether mice have been in there, you know, what's going on, but the power windows won't work. None of the windows in RV I'm sure in 1984, I'm sure it was a great, nice RV when everything was powered. but it really could have used a roll down window because it was way too hot to be riding in, you know, the meth lab of an RV. So I'm asking Eric to get up and go back and start opening windows in the RV to get some air circulating, so at least it's not stagnant air. If ever we open a window in the living room, maybe one in the kitchen, open a bathroom window, something, that air will move around and will cool off a little bit. Because basically we're sitting in a greenhouse with all that windshield in front of us. We're just frying like bacon at the Waffle House. So he starts opening windows. Now I'm trying to drive this thing, and it's running on 8 Maypops tires. They may pop at the end of the block, and they may wait 2 hours before they pop, but they're probably gonna pop. They have dry rot cracks in the side of them that big. So I'm coming up the road, and I'm kind of steering like this. Steering's wore out, and I'm driving, and 38 feet on this tiny little country road coming out of North Carolina, I'm afraid to take my eyes off the road, fearing either being in the ditch or running over somebody. So I'm focused on the road, trying to drive, and telling Eric, open more windows that I can barely feel the breeze. So I hear him sliding the windows, because they're like trailer windows. You know, in an old RV, you just slide them. You can hear him sliding the aluminum frame, and I hear him going back. Now, man, 38 feet of motorhome. Well, there's a lot of windows. So I hear him open them, and he makes it back about to the bathroom and starts opening, and I'm getting a good breeze. Stuff's moving around, you know, got a breeze going. It's starting to feel tolerable while driving, and I'm like, okay, we can handle this for the next 3 hours. You know, this isn't so bad. We can handle this. Well, Eric makes it all the way back to the bedroom. And when he does, I hear him open one last window, and then everything behind me gets really bright. You ever know, like when you're sitting there maybe watching TV, somebody comes in and turns the light on, and everything behind you lights up, and you're like, oh, what was that? Well, I'm kind of driving, and everything behind me lights up like he'd found this huge floodlight. And I'm like, and I don't want to really look, because I'm on a curvy road, and I'm like, what's going on? And Eric's in the back going, Ona, Ona. And I'm like, what's happening? Ona, what's happening? Ona. And then all of a sudden it goes back dark again. And Eric comes up, walks up, and sits down in the little captain's chair. You know, the fancy RVs had captain's chairs up front. And he comes up and he sits down in the chair beside me, and I'm looking at him like, what was that? What happened? What? And he looks over at me and goes, the roof came off. And I went, what? He said, when I opened the last window, the roof came off. I said, what? He said, yeah. He said the roof lifted off the RV about this high and was flapping in the wind. He said, when I shut the window, it came back down. And I calmly looked at him and said, well, let's not open that last window anymore. He said, okay. And we're driving on. We never stop. Now, mind you, our wives are behind us. My wife is driving her Yukon. She had a GMC Yukon. And they see all this go on. And all the sticks and everything, pine cones, whatever else that was on the roof of the RV while it was sitting outside the house sinking in the ground, all decides to blow off when the roof lifts up. Now, mind you, they see all this debris. Wife slams on the brakes. You know, stuff goes all over the road. They drive around it, through it, come on up the road. That's an important part. So we make it to Route 220. We're getting back on. In North Carolina, we get off the little curvy mountain road, jump back on 220. I think it's might be called Lincolnton somewhere, maybe. Jump back on 220, and when we get on, I gun the RV. You know, we're going to get her up to speed. We're going to get home. I don't notice anything happen. I'm just flying. More sticks are blowing off the roof. Our wife's behind us. Later, she tells me, didn't tell me at that moment, later tells me that a fan belt flew out from under the RV and goes across the ditch. But they didn't think it was important to call and tell us because they said there was so much stuff flying out of the RV that they didn't think it was important. Duly noted. That's like 30 minutes before we get to the state line in Virginia. So we drive, fast forward, we drive an hour and a half. Now the RV is backfiring for some reason. We're thinking that, hey, this thing's got bad gas, you know, it's been sitting, it's done sucked up water in the tank, you know, we're running through all the scenarios. Now, we get to where Roanoke Civic Center is, on 581 in Roanoke. And if anybody's local's been through 581, you know traffic right by the Civic Center, Hotel Roanoke, right through there is always busy. So we're coming up 220. I get in the middle of 581, which is 3 lanes. I get in the middle lane because I don't want to ride in the right lane and have to move that thing back and forth when traffic is merging on and off the interstate. I don't want to be trying to move that monster from lane to lane. So I just decide, hey, I'm picking the middle lane. Everybody can go around. Everybody can park, you know, go around me like salmon swimming upstream. So we're going by, and we get right by the Hotel Roanoke, and like I say, it's backfiring, but it's a whole lot worse backfiring. It's like every couple seconds, it's backfiring. And I'm like, ooh, this is getting bad. All of a sudden, we get right to the Roanoke Civic Center, and it goes, pow! And then everything's quiet. Just dead silent, nothing but the wind. So I look in the mirror, nothing over here. I make a Hail Mary from the middle lane to the off-ramp. I managed to make it to the off-ramp, coast down, and come all the way off the off-ramp, had enough momentum that I make it up to the stoplight for Williamson Road. And I went all the way to the left-hand lane, thinking I was going to get into Sheets, get some good gas, and drive on home. Well, I pull up to the light and I crank and crank, but it's not cranking. There's nothing happening. It is just dead. It won't even light lights up on the dash. Remember back when I said we thought a mouse had been in it and there was, you know, nothing on the dash was working? Well, we thought a situation like this might happen, so we brought a tow strap. So I have Eric jump in to the Yukon. When the light turns green, I had them drive around. I jumped out of the RV, hooked the tow strap on the ball of the Yukon, and had them drive ahead. We never even made it through one cycle of the light. We did this all when it turned green. He drove around, pulled in front, I hitched it on, jumped in the RV, and he pulled me through the intersection to the parking lot across the street from the Sheets. Now, when we get there, we start getting out tools, start trying to diagnose what's going on. Come to find out, that belt that flew off that they managed to tell us about right about now was an important belt. It was a belt running the alternator. And here's an important tip for all the Chevrolet fans. You can run a big block Chevrolet with an HEI distributor all the way down to 2 volts before the battery will, or before the distributor will cut off and you can't run it anymore. We had run the battery down to 2 volts and it was still running. So we decided that we weren't going to get a belt because no AutoZone, Advanced, Napa, nobody was going to have a belt to fit a 1984 GeorgiaBoy because we didn't have the old one to go by. So our solution was, there was an AutoZone or an O'Reilly's, I forget which one, like 3 blocks away on Williamson Road. We rode down, bought a battery, put it in the RV, and decided if it made it in an hour and a half and went to 2 volts and cut off in Roanoke, we only had 1 more hour to make it home. So we figured we could go from a fully charged 12-volt battery and make it 1 hour. We'll be above 2 volts. So basically we throw the new battery in, fire up the RV, and it was magical. No backfire, ran like a champ. It was amazing. Wasn't bad gas after all. So we come all the way home. We pull into the driveway, and of course my family's there to see the RV pull in. It's kind of hard to miss 38 feet of meth lab motorhome. And my brother, being the comedian he is, calls me on the cell phone, and the first thing he says is, "She's a beaut, Clark." And, you know, the National Lampoon's reference. So basically, I'll insert a picture of the RV. So that was today's episode for Storytime. When your friends ask you to do things, make sure you're ready that they're going to involve you and to do something else. And yes, we're still going to do more stuff with Eric, and Eric's going to still do more stuff with us. We have another project coming up, but we'll get to that in another episode. All right. That's it for today's story time.
Thank you, Lord. Thank you for today.